Hi, today we're going to go over how to set up a video conferencing system, how to prepare it for being used. You can see the system is right over there, over my shoulder, and although it's technically a portable system, it's on rollers and so forth, we generally try to keep that system within one location per semester so we don't end up rolling it around too much. It is a little bit bulky. What we want to do is go ahead and set up the tables in a T format. So let's do that first. What you'll probably want to do first is get the long part of the T set up. So what we've got is a table set up so that at the very least everybody can be fairly close together so they're not spread out far apart. The camera doesn't necessarily have to be moving around a lot to catch everybody, so it's easy to set up a camera view where you can see pretty much everybody in the conference at one time. So that's the beginning, is getting our table set up. You might notice up here, I'll bring the camera up a little closer, but there's about a 3-foot gap between the end of the table and the front of the video conferencing cabinet. So down here is actually kind of the guts of the system. You can already see obviously the 2 monitors that are up there, and we'll kind of get into those in a moment. But first off, I'm going to open up the cabinet, and you can see inside the cabinet we've got the actual video conferencing codec unit itself. This is really the brains, the heart of the whole thing. So video goes into this to get sent out, video comes out of this to show up on our monitors and so forth, as well as audio coming from the microphones. So typically inside the cabinet what we'll have is, well, here's the power switch here, which again we'll get back to in a moment, but we've got the codec. If there's any accessory devices we have attached, so in this case we actually do have a little DVD player, external DVD player, that'll be down here. There may also be a computer attached as well. That's kind of an option right now. We have people bringing in laptops and plugging their laptops into the system, but we will probably go ahead and have a computer attached in here full time. Okay, so that'll be there. Now inside here as well, the other thing, probably the next step for us, is the microphones for the system. The Polycom system has microphones that lay out on the table. You see them right here. And those microphones are on a very long cable. So let's go ahead first off, before we actually even plug anything in or power anything up, let's make laying out the microphones the next step in doing our setup. All right, so in a setup like this, what we want to do is make sure that the microphones more or less reach everybody evenly. Okay, so the microphones are set up basically on one continuous cable. So what I'll try to do usually is bring the mic up just about this. This is not by any means an exact science, so don't worry about your spacing too much. The only one thing you might want to take into consideration though is that the mics do have a very long cable, and so I try to be cognizant of the fact that I'm unwinding a cable and try to make it so that when I have to put the system back together again, or when I have to put everything away, that my cable isn't getting all tangled up too much. So just be a little bit careful more than anything else in just how you manage the cable that you're using here. If you want to be extra neat with your cable, you can go ahead and just drop some of this cable here between the tabletops. And probably the only reason you want to do that, besides it just being pretty, is that it will also help to keep cables from being grabbed by people inadvertently on the tabletop. So there you go. So now we've got our mic spaced in such a way that everybody in this segment, these 8 folks, can be reached evenly, and these folks here can be reached evenly as well. And that's basically it. All right. So now the next thing we're going to do is go ahead and we've plugged the power in, and the system isn't turned on yet, but before we turn on the system we want to make sure that the network cable is plugged in. And something to note here is that in this particular classroom, this may be the case in other rooms as well, is that there are specific network jacks set aside for the video conferencing system. So in this case you're going to see that on the jack plate, which I'll show you in a second, there's one network cable going into a blue jack, which is for the instructor station. It's already being used. There'll be a second white jack, and that white jack is the one that you always want to make sure to plug your network cable into for the video conferencing system. Alright, so you might notice here right now the network cable is kind of running wild on the floor between the conferencing system and the network jack, which is just up here. What you always want to try to do with the network cable, and just cables in general, is if you know there's going to be some traffic, if at all possible you want to get those cables out of the way of traffic. So in this case what I'll do is just go ahead and make sure that this network cable is just away from where people are going to be walking. There's enough network cable here I could actually probably go all the way up against the wall and really get the cable out of the way, but this is probably sufficient for the kind of traffic that we're going to be seeing coming over to the conference table. So now we're ready to go ahead and power up the system. We've got the network cables plugged in, we've got the power plugged in, we've got our mics all laid out. So we'll go ahead and power the system up. There's just a single toggle switch up here on the top right hand side, just above the codec. Flick that, and the codec should come on, and you'll see a light here on the codec itself that goes from blue to green, and when it's green it's saying that the codec itself is powering up. If it remains blue, then the codec is in standby, which shouldn't normally happen by itself. Now there's actually 3 remotes in here. There'll be one for the monitors, and it'll say Panasonic TV in this case. There'll also be a remote, which we're going to see in a little bit, that's specifically for the video conferencing system, and it says Polycom on it. And finally, there may or may not be a remote for the DVD player, depending whether or not the DVD player is actually attached to the system at this time. Okay, turning on the monitors is a no-brainer. You're simply going to go ahead and hit the power button on the remote. Sometimes you get lucky and you hit once and both monitors turn on at the same time. This is the first window you're going to see once the system has been powered up. It contains the basic information you need to be able to conduct the conference, including the address of the site you'll be communicating with, and buttons to access information about the conference, including the directory or the address book, and also a button for locating a list of recent calls in case you've made a call previously but had never actually entered it into the address book. You can still recall that information. Finally, below there is a system button, which as a conference administrator or faculty member or instructor, you really won't need to access the system area. That's really the domain of the technicians who are actually managing the system. In any case, let's kind of get started with how to actually make an initial call. The easiest way to make a call is if the location you're trying to communicate with has been entered into the address book or the directory here. Now, it's standard practice for us, for scheduled classes in particular, to already have those locations programmed into the directory. So, again, as an instructor, all you have to do is go ahead and click the directory button on your remote, and that will bring up the directory or address book that you can then scroll through and locate the location that you want to get to. So in this case, maybe I want to connect up with Grayslake 312. Now all I have to do is hit the call button on my remote, and momentarily I'll actually see the site. Now notice here on the home screen, it's now switched to the full camera view. Alright, so at this point, we're inside of a conference. And I want to talk to you a bit about some of the controls that you have while you're in a conference, some of the choices you have while in a conference. The first choice I want to talk to you about is being able to move the camera around the room conveniently. Now at this point, I've got the camera on me, so let's say, for example, I'm the instructor in a class. I'm speaking, so I'm the person on camera. The remote side is seeing me pretty much exclusively. Now let's say, for example, I want to open up the view. I want everybody in the remote site to see everybody in this location. Now I could manually move the camera around, and I have controls on here to do that, where I can pan, tilt, and zoom, which is to say move the camera left and right, up and down, or actually see a wider view or a tighter view. Okay, and I can do that, simply by doing this. Okay, using those toggle switches on the remote. However, the much more efficient way to do it is to use the presets, which are actually already programmed into the system. Okay, we have a little map here that shows the 8 to 9 different locations that the camera is set to go to, and it's pretty much based on table. If you want to see the entire room, by default we've set that up so if you simply hit the 0 number on your remote, it'll zoom out, and now you can see everybody sitting at the table. It's a pretty nice, quick thing to do. You don't have to be spending a lot of time trying to manipulate the camera that way. Now let's say, for example, there's an individual sitting immediately across from me that's speaking. I may find it useful to go ahead and really focus the camera on that person. Now the way to do that is to quickly glance at my chart here, and I realize this is position number 1. So I'll simply hit the 1 on the remote, and now the camera is zoomed into that location. Similarly, maybe somebody located in the back portion of the conference table wants to speak. Let's say the person's sitting over there. So I'll go ahead and find that that's location number 4 on the map, hit 4, and now the camera zooms into that location. So you can see that's a really quick way to move the camera around the room, and automation in this case is a really good thing. Something else I wanted to talk to you about was how to connect up your laptop computer to the video conferencing system. There is a whip and a connector, which you see right here, that connects into the system on one end, and then on the other end provides you with a video and sound connector to be able to attach to your computer. Okay, this is just like attaching an external monitor or external speakers to your laptop. But what you'll do now is on your PC or your Mac, there will either be a little dongle that you can attach to the side of your computer, which is what Macs typically use in order to connect to a VGA. If you're using a PC-based laptop, the laptop itself will have this connector built into it already, okay, just as a connection on the side, a port on the side. What you'll want to do is take that VGA connector for the conferencing system and plug it into the VGA port on your computer, like so. Similarly, on the side of your computer, there's going to be a headphone jack of some kind. So you just want to go ahead and find that headphone jack and plug your sound in there. All right. And now you're ready to go. One other thing to point out for you is that when you are setting up this system, you want to set up the resolution on your laptop to be 1024 by 768. That's the ideal output resolution to use with this system. In addition to being able to share the view of yourself and your room to a remote site, you can also share other devices. You can share content on your computer, for example, a PowerPoint presentation, or you could also share a DVD. Now, to get to those resources, there's a couple different ways that you can do that. Getting to your computer view is definitely the easiest way to go. On your remote, there's simply a button that says graphics, and it actually has a small icon of a computer on it. If you press the graphics button, the screen switches over to this computer view. And now you can go ahead and advance your presentation as you normally would. Now, using this assumes that your laptop is already plugged in. And earlier I gave you some instructions to show you how to plug your laptop into the system. You may find it useful to be able to see yourself while you're giving your presentation. And the simple way to do that, again, is on the remote there is a picture-in-a-picture or PIP button. By pressing that, you introduce the picture-in-a-picture up on screen as you see here. Now if you want to move that or get that off screen, you'll notice that around the picture right now there's a blue border. When the picture within a picture has a blue border, then pressing the picture in a picture button takes that off screen. Now if I press that button again, it brings it up, and you notice there's a gold border. As long as that border is gold, every time I press the picture in a picture button, it simply moves the picture around on screen. And again, you may find this beneficial to have the picture in a different location on screen. In any case, if you want to take the picture off, simply wait for the border to turn blue, and then hit the picture in a picture button again. All right, so that's what you need to know about sharing content on your computer. Now when you want to get back to your room view, simply press the graphics button again, and it brings you back to your room view. Using the DVD player on the system is pretty easy. The DVD player is located inside the cabinet of the conferencing system. You can open that up, and you'll see the player on the shelf right here. Now what you want to make sure first off is that the DVD player is powered on. You can use either the remote to turn the DVD player on, or you can simply press the power button here. Now to put your DVD in, you can again use the remote and select the open and close option, or you can simply press open, close right there on the DVD. In, close, and it's ready to go. Now what I'd suggest you do before class, if possible, is go ahead and select the DVD player as a video source so you can actually see the menu of the DVD player up on screen. And at that point you can go ahead and queue up your DVD and have it ready to go, just like you would when you're in a traditional classroom. To access the DVD player, what you want to do is press the camera button on the remote. Once you've done that, on screen you'll see some icons showing you the different cameras that are available. By selecting number 3, and I do this by toggling over using my remote, if I hit the enter button now, it will switch me over to the DVD player. Now at this point you can operate the DVD player as you would anywhere else. It's a matter of using the DVD remote that comes with the system. Now when I want to get back over to my room view, all I have to do is hit camera and then select 1, and I'm back to my room view. Now you might have noticed as well that when we selected camera, in addition to the DVD player, there was also a computer. That is essentially the same thing, it is the same thing as selecting the graphics button on the remote. Now one last thing I want to talk with you about is your ability to control resources that are located at the remote site. Now this may be something useful to you, especially if there is nobody at the remote site who's there to control the systems that they have. Now on your remote there are 2 buttons, a near button and a far button. Depending on which button you press, that's going to determine which system, either the local system or the remote system, is going to be responding to your controls, particularly as regards controlling remote devices or local devices. Okay, so now notice up here in this corner here, when I press the near button, you see near appears up on screen. Also, if I press far, it switches over to far. So that's actually a little visual cue right there telling us which site we're able to control at the moment. All right, now if I press far and then press camera, I get on screen a similar view that we saw earlier when we were selecting devices on our side, only now instead of having 4 possible devices, we've got 5. Okay, so again, I'll press that camera button on the remote just like I did here earlier, and now I'm going to select 4. Okay, when I do that, it switches over to the instructor view. Again, if I want to switch back over to the student view, I go to camera, and in this case select 1. And that switches our view back over to the student view. Now when you're in a video conference and it's completed, most of the time we don't have the system programmed to actually automatically disconnect you from the remote site. So what you'll want to do, again, on your remote, is go ahead and just hit the hang up button in the top right-hand corner of the remote. Hitting hang up will immediately disconnect you from your session and you're back where you were before. That's about all there is to it. Alright, so the last thing I want to talk to you about is just how to put the system away. And that consists, number one, of shutting it down, disconnecting, and then also finally getting all the components put away properly and then sliding the system back where it needs to reside for storage in between use. Okay. As part of your shutdown procedure, also make sure that there are no DVDs still residing inside the DVD player. If you do locate a DVD, go ahead and turn it into the security office at the end of the evening. Also notice that we keep several copies of the preset Zoom locations sheet here in the system. If there are no sheets left or there's only one or two left, please make a point of printing out some additional ones that can be placed in there later. So let's start off first with just powering the system down. That's generally the best thing to do first. We want to make sure that, number one, we'll grab our remote and just make sure that our connection is actually hung up, which in this case it is. If it's not hung up, all we got to do is hit the hang up button on the remote and that stops the connection. Now to power the Polycom system down, what you'll want to do is come down to the power button for the Polycom system. To power the Polycom system down, come down to that power button and hold it until it turns blue. The system is now turned off. And then finally, once you've turned off the monitors as well as the conferencing system itself, now you can power down the entire system just by hitting the power button right there. Now we know the complete system has been powered off. Okay, so our next step is to go ahead and start getting all the components brought back together. That means bringing in the network cable, it means bringing in the microphones, and it means bringing in the laptop computer whip that comes to the system as well. We'll bring all those things together right now. Now again, remember we're disconnecting the Ethernet cable from the white plug. And now we'll go ahead and just start collecting up the cable neatly. And now we'll go ahead and collect up the whip that attaches to the laptop computer. And we just want to make sure this is residing neatly on top of the unit like so, right next to the network cable. Alright, and next we want to make sure that the microphones are brought in. Now, one of the things to point out about the microphones is the cabling is pretty long and it tends to get cluttered up pretty easily. So I do have some suggestions for how you can deal with some of that clutter with the cables. What I'll typically do is I'll separate the microphones from one another. I'll take the microphone that's at the very end of the line and I'll follow the cable connecting it to the next microphone and I'll just disconnect it on back. And it disconnects just like a regular telephone. But if you disconnect that there, then what that'll allow you to do is keep this cable wound up with that microphone and this cable wound up with this microphone. And it just makes untangling and so forth a lot less of an issue. Okay, so once that's done, you can go ahead and be very careful with this wire, but then just go ahead and do it like so, just in a loose loop. Alright, so that one's done. And then do a similar thing with the second one, but watch what I do here. We have a spool that we actually keep the microphone cable on, and while it's probably still not a perfect solution for keeping our wire managed, one thing I want to point out to you is it'll allow you to go ahead and spool up the wire for this microphone in a way that it doesn't get tangled. Okay, so you'll see this microphone has about 5 feet between the spool itself, okay, where it comes out of the spool, and the microphone itself. So what I'll usually do is go ahead and just wind the microphone around the spool like that. Okay, so now that's all wound up. Then I'll come to the other side of the spool where the portion of the cable that runs into the Polycom system is located, the video conferencing system, and I'll just wind it up there and then tuck it neatly underneath the system. And notice I've also got that first bit that I wound up. Now, last but not least, you also want to make sure that all of your remotes are collected. And there should be up to 3 remotes that you've got to manage: your TV remote, your DVD remote, and your Polycom remote. And we'll go ahead and just put those in the drawer down here. Also, don't forget, before we actually roll this system away, we want to make sure that the power cable is unplugged from the wall and also neatly coiled up and placed on the countertop of the video conferencing system. Now, to keep things as simple as possible, what we want to try to do is roll the conferencing system over in a corner that's probably like 5 or 6 feet away from where it normally resides. So what we'll do is get over here and roll this card over and put it in the position we want it to be in. This is how the system should look when you've finished putting it away. Cables neatly rolled up on the countertop, and the system itself pushed up against the wall at a slight angle, not flat up against the wall and not inserted into the opening there, but at a slight angle. This is for aesthetic reasons. It's more attractive visually to come into the room and see the system from the front, more or less, no matter where you are in the room, rather than seeing the system from a sideways view, being able to see the backs of the monitors and such. So please be sure when you're putting the system away to go ahead and emulate this and keep the system at a slight angle when it's put away in the room. Besides that, if you have any questions, get in touch with me. You'll see my contact information right here on the screen, and I'll be able to provide you with any further assistance that you need. Take care.